In this video, we're going to look at left-leaning decreases. We can look at 3 left-leaning decreases specifically: knit 2 together through the back loop, SSK, and an alternative SSK, which you can do in one step. If you are new here, my name is Anniken. I design knitting patterns, I teach knitting workshops online and in person, and I sell yarn through my website, YarnAddict.co.uk. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't subscribed yet, please consider subscribing. In lace knitting, but also in regular knitting, sweaters, if you're doing a sweater in stocking stitch, for example, if you want to do any shaping, you really want to look at left-leaning and right-leaning decreases. Right-leaning decreases, knit 2 together. Unless you knit combination knitting in stocking stitch, then this will be a little bit different. But if you knit English style or continental style, where your stitch sits with a leading leg at the front, then if you want to do a right-leaning decrease, you just knit 2 together. Left-leaning decreases are a little bit more complicated because there are several options. So in the UK, when I first started designing and teaching, the most popular left-leaning decrease was slip-on, knit 1, pass slip stitch over. I don't think that's very popular anymore. I think some more kind of traditional patterns maybe still use it, but I think most people now have moved on from that. So I'm not going to include that in this video. We are going to look at knit 2 together through the back of the loop, because I had someone ask me recently why that wasn't a good option. She said loads of people now are just doing knit 2 together through the back of the loop. What's wrong with that? And I mean, nothing really. You can do what you want, but it doesn't look as neat. So let's take a closer look at this swatch here. On this swatch, I've done a knit 2 together through the back loop here. I've done an SSK, regular traditional SSK here. And then over here, I've done an alternative SSK, which is my default version at the moment, because I find it a lot quicker to do. On the bottom half of the swatch, I've done it in garter stitch. So I've done the same stitch pattern as I've done at the top here, but on the wrong side rows I've knitted. So we end up with garter stitch. And you can tell in the garter stitch, it doesn't really matter what you do. Whether you do knit 2 together through the back loop or the alternative SSK, doesn't really matter. So in garter stitch, just do what you prefer, where you find easiest, where you find quickest. It doesn't really make any difference which decrease you use. In stocking stitch is more visible. So you'll see here, this is the knit 2 together through the back of the loop. So I did a yarn over, knit 1, and then the decrease. And you can see it doesn't look very neat at all. In fact, it looks very, very messy. I haven't blocked this swatch properly. I've just given it a very quick steam press to smooth it out. And then I knitted a few more stitches, and I did a yarn over and a knit 1, then the regular SSK. And that looks neater, and that was my go-to for many, many years. And then a few more stitches, yarn over, knit 1, and then the alternative SSK, which I tried to do many years ago, and I didn't like it. I didn't think it looked any better than the SSK. But a few years ago, I learned a new way of doing it, and now I really prefer it, and it is usually my go-to. In my patterns, I tend to write down the instructions for the regular SSK, because that is the one that's most commonly used. But any left-leaning decrease, you can substitute any of these. So let's have a look and see how you do these different decreases. I'm not going to knit the same stitch pattern I knitted on my swatch. I'm just going to show you these decreases. So I'm just going to knit a few stitches. To knit the knit 2 together through the back of the loop, you just go in through the back loop of the next 2 stitches. So instead of going in like that, you go in through the back loop, the next 2 stitches, and knit them together. Like that. Quick and easy, and it's probably fairly self-explanatory, so we're not going to look any more at that. SSK, you slip on knitwise, so you put your right needle in as if you're going to knit, slip it off, and then you do the same thing to the next stitch, so you slip the next one off knitwise as well. You have to slip them off one at a time, not together, and then you put your left needle into the front of those 2 stitches from the left. So I've seen a lot of people try and do it like that, where they put it in knitwise, and that's wrong. You put it in purlwise, so from the left. So your needles cross over each other, and if you put that left needle into the front, your right needle will be ready for you to knit those 2 stitches together. So then you just knit them together. If you knit English style, let me just... So these can be done whether you knit English style or continental style. So slip 2 knitwise and then put your left needle in and then you just knit them together like that. Okay, so let's look at how to do the improved SSK. If you need to see any of this again, just rewind slightly. I'm going to show the last version several times because that's probably the one you're least familiar with. So we're going to do the improved SSK. So the way I first learned it was to slip one stitch knitwise, slip the next stitch purlwise. So the first one knitwise, the second one purlwise. So you can see now, if you look closely, that the first stitch has the leading leg at the back and the second stitch has the leading leg at the front. And then you knit those 2, you put your left needle in just like you did before and you knit those 2 together. And that's fine, you can do it like that, but I didn't used to find that very neat. So I discovered a few years ago an improved way of doing it, and it means that you can do it all in one go. Because what frustrates people about the SSK is because you have to slip 2 knitwise and then put your left needle into the front and knit them together. It takes a bit longer than just knitting 2 together through the back loop. But as we've seen, knitting 2 together through the back loop doesn't look very neat. I also get the question often, the traditional SSK, what's different between that and knitting 2 together through the back loop? And the difference is that you twist the stitches. When you slip them knitwise, they're twisted. So if you look now, you can see the leading legs at the back on both of those stitches. Because when you put your left needle into the front, you are technically just knitting them through the back loop. But you've twisted them first. So that's the main difference between that and the knit 2 together through the back loop. So let's look at the alternative SSK. Okay, so I've zoomed in a bit more for this. Put your needle into the first stitch knitwise, and then you're going to twist your needle around. So if you look at the back here, I'm turning my knitting. I'm actually going to let go of my working yarn a minute. You can do this you can do this continental style or English style. So you go into the first stitch knitwise, but you don't take it off. And then when I first started doing this, I would twist my needles and tilt my needles and look, but now I do it just without looking. So I'm going into that one knitwise, and now I go behind that stitch. So I come behind the back leg of that stitch and I go into the next stitch purlwise. So my needle is still into the first stitch and into the second stitch, and then I knit those together, either English style or continental style. But when you come out, you have to make sure that you come, there's a little tiny bit hole here that you need to make sure you come out of that one. So you come out through both stitches. So when you take it off, you've caught both stitches basically. So let's show that again. So go into the first stitch knitwise and then go into the second stitch purlwise. So if you look at the back of your knitting and you go behind the second leg of that first stitch into the second stitch purlwise like that, and then if you knit English style, you just wrap your yarn around. I will say I think this is probably easier to do the last part of this where you have to come back through to the front. It's probably easier to do if you can keep tension on your working yarn. If your working yarn is allowed to go loose, then it's a bit more difficult like that. So the way I do it when I'm knitting along a bit quicker, so let me just undo both of these and put them back the correct way. So let me just show you. Now they are a little bit looser because I've already worked them once. So the way I normally do this without tilting my knitting is I go in knitwise and then into the next stitch purlwise, and you can see, I can see it all from the front. So in knitwise, I'm going to pull this fabric down a bit with my thumb and my index finger just so you can see better. In knitwise, then I go behind the back leg of that stitch into the next one purlwise like that, and knit them together. So at my normal knitting speed, that would be more like in, second one, and through like that. Obviously to start with it will be a bit slower, but as you get more practice it will become quicker to do. So let me know if you have tried any of these left leaning decreases, and let me know which one you prefer. Do you still do the slip on, nip on, pass, slip, stitch over? Do you do the knit 2 together through the back loop? Do you do the regular SSK, or do you do the improved SSK? Let me know which one you do and which ones you've tried, and if you haven't tried the new and improved SSK or the regular SSK, just knit a swatch and try them. And you can really see it when you do them in a row, in a diagonal row. So for each of these, I knitted one more stitch on the next knit row, so they are diagonal, and then it's more obvious than if you just have an individual decrease. When you have this diagonal line, you can really see how neat or untidy they are. Really see here, that one's quite jaggedy and messy. That one is much better, but that one's even smoother. And the reason I think that that one is smoother is because I'm doing it without taking the stitches off my needle. I'm not stretching the stitches. I think when you take the stitches off, they do stretch a little bit, and then you put the left needle in from the left. I think doing it in one move means that the stitches don't stretch, and I think that's part of the reason. It's also about the orientation of the stitches, but I think that's also part of the reason why this looks a lot neater. So let me know in the comments if you've tried this, which one you prefer, and will you try some of these, and which one do you think you'll use in the future. I have a knitting tutorials playlist on my YouTube channel with lots and lots of tutorials. Some of them are a bit older now and some are more recent, but there are lots of tutorials there to choose from. If you are specifically interested in learning about lace knitting, then I do recommend my Successful Lace Knitting online course, which is a really big course. It has something like, I think, 45 lessons and 60 videos or something. It's massive. It's really big. But the good thing is you keep definite access to it. You can watch it in your own time and at your own pace. And I'm there to help you if you have any questions. And it will take you right through from lace beginner to experienced lace knitter, and it covers all kinds of things related to lace knitting. So if you have any questions, please ask below this video, and if you haven't subscribed yet, please consider subscribing, and please give this video a thumbs up. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.